Northern Hemisphere Team of the Year, folks. Been crunching the numbers, and we're going to pick 23 guys to make a Northern Hemisphere Team of the Year. I should say, when I say Northern Hemisphere, I'm pretty much speaking of the Tier 1 nations, because I wanted to largely make this as stats-based as I could, and I don't have stats on countries like Georgia, unfortunately. So, yeah, the Georgian guys, despite some good performances this year, won't be showing up here. And I figured I've done it in the past. I know Japan is in the Northern Hemisphere, but I'm going to keep Japan players eligible for my Southern Hemisphere team, because I feel like Japan's going to end up in the Rugby Championship one of these days. So they feel kind of more Southern, even though they're technically a Northern Hemisphere team. So we're pretty much looking at the Six Nations teams. We're going to go through 23 guys. And like I said, hopefully I've got some cool stats which can kind of help justify, but I know everyone will pick their own teams and come out with a different conclusion. But here's my one. I should say also, if you want to read about it, there might be some more details and some more stats and whatnot mentioned. I'll be writing this up for Planet Rugby as well, so check out Planet Rugby down in the description. It's a website that I've used all the time for looking at match lineups and kind of interesting stories and whatnot. So yeah, this one's kind of a double file one, the video and the article. Go check it out. But yeah, we're going to start with some props. And if you know me, you'll know that I'm a big fan of CYRIL BAILLE from France. He's the offload king, which is not the reason you necessarily pick a loose head prop. Like, I think he's offloaded, 8 times in 2022. The next best loose head prop is Alice Genge, I think, with 4. So yeah, CYRIL BAILLE loves an offload. So he's a kind of a flashy prop, but I mean, you're picking a prop because you're picking a guy who can scrummage, and CYRIL BAILLE can certainly scrummage. If my numbers are right, and I should say I collect them all manually, so they might not always be 100%, but if my numbers are correct, he's conceded 2 penalties all year. 2 penalties. Whereas, for context, some of the kind of big unit, kind of loose head props, dynamic guys like Genge, if I'm not mistaken, has conceded 18. And Pierre Schoeman, 9. So 2 is a ridiculous number. It shows you that he's doing something right at scrum time. In terms of his ball carrying, his defenders beaten are only behind Genge and Schoeman, who are the other 2 kind of big dynamic loose head props. 3 meters a carry for him. Every time he's carrying the ball, he's averaging 3 meters, is the highest of all the kind of Six Nations loose head props. There are some Southern Hemisphere props who can out carry him, but as far as Northern guys go, he's right up there, and his tackling percentage is 96%. The guy is phenomenal. How this guy doesn't get more love in terms of nominations for awards, I don't know. But as far as I'm concerned, he is an absolutely world-class player. So CYRIL BAILLE, very important for everything France is doing. And for tight head prop, I don't think there are many people who would pick a Northern Hemisphere Team of the Year and pick a tight head prop other than Tadhg Furlong. I mean, you could make the case for a few guys, but Tadhg Furlong is a freakish athlete in the best of ways. Obviously, the guy can scrummage. But then, I mean, there are guys who scrummage and then guys who are good around the park, but Tadhg Furlong is genuinely that guy who's good at both. I mean, as far as props go, I think his number of passes is second only to Kyle Sinclair, and Kyle Sinclair does have some pretty sweet hands. As far as defenders beaten go, he's the top Northern Hemisphere tight head prop. I think Taniela Tupou might have him for that kind of pure ball carrying from the Southern Hemisphere, but I mean, Tadhg is a big unit. 9 tackles a game from him is the top from all the tight head props, and he tackles at 91%. The guy and he's even got a kick. He even can put boot to ball. He wins a couple of turnovers. The guy's had a phenomenal year. The fact that he's never been nominated for World Player of the Year honestly blows my mind. So there you go. CYRIL BAILLE and Tadhg Furlong, 2 of the best scrummaging units primarily, but then add absolutely a heap of kind of X-Factor stuff around the park. Hooker, I went with Julien Marchand from France, and there were a few good options at hooker, to be fair. There's one element of his game where he really excels compared to all the other Northern Hemisphere hookers, though, and that is his work at the breakdown. The guy's won more turnovers than anybody else. He's He's kind of like the Malcolm Marx of the North, but I don't think he's quite as good as Malcolm Marx personally at the breakdown. I think Malcolm Marx has got the edge of him there, but he's probably got a better ball carrying game than Malcolm Marx based on the numbers this year. Like only Samasola Taukei'aho from the All Blacks beats more defenders than Marchand. So he's got both facets of his game. Going forward, he's a big unit, and defensively, he's a real pest at the breakdown. He's making 8 runs a game, which is more than any of the hookers, so his work rate's phenomenal. The French line-out, which is not just Marchand, but across all 3 of the hookers they use, is like at 92%. So the line-out's great. He carries, he defends. The guy's a real menace. So I think he's another one who had a phenomenal season. So yeah, kind of unsurprisingly, 2 French players and an Irishman, so 2 of the teams that did rather well this year. I will get to a bench once we get to the end. Now, locks. There's one guy who I thought maybe on reputation you pick him, but maybe not on the stats. I thought we'll check the numbers. But interestingly, MARO ITOJE still checks out. I know a lot of non-English fans don't like MARO ITOJE. But you got to admit, the guy is another kind of freakish athlete. Like, he's in the air, he's the first equal for line-out wins of all the locks this year. He is very good in the air. He has very long arms, if you haven't noticed, and that tends to help you to be able to catch a lot of balls in the air. Like, he's not quite as tall as some of the other locks around, but I feel like he's probably got one of the best wingspans around. So those arms of his mean in the air he is absolutely lethal. And he's second for turnovers won, behind only TADHG BEIRNE. That's always been an aspect of MARO ITOJE's game, which has been really great. Like, he's a big dominant tackler, and he's a menace at the breakdown. That's kind of continued. And people always say, like, in recent years, oh, he concedes too many penalties. Well, this year, I mean, he still conceded some penalties, as did they all, but I mean, he's got like fewer penalties conceded than guys like TADHG BEIRNE, than James Ryan, some of the kind of other elite locks around Northern Hemisphere rugby. So that's an aspect of his game which is pleasing to see, kind of cleaned up a little bit. 5 passes a game makes him the 3rd for locks chucking the ball around from the ones I've been picking from. Only TADHG BEIRNE and Federico Rutzer actually passed the ball more than MARO ITOJE, so he's quite happy to chuck the ball around. His tackling is just behind TADHG BEIRNE. So yeah, MARO ITOJE continues to be one of the best locks in rugby. Now, if you notice when I was mentioning MARO's stats, I mentioned a lot of this guy's stats, and that guy's TADHG BEIRNE. Now, I'll admit, if you have a locking duo of ITOJE and BEIRNE, you may be a little bit lightweight. I haven't actually checked what their weights are, but generally you like to have a skills guy and maybe a big old lump of a unit as well to go alongside them. But TADHG BEIRNE has played kind of, both sides of the locking duo as well, and I still think that would make a pretty mean looking duo, because these guys, they're such menaces. TADHG BEIRNE, the most turnovers won of any player in 2022. Clearly, he's like head and shoulders above everyone else. I figure it was like 12. Next guy was like 9, I think. So like huge performer in that regard. He is just absolutely menacing. The top lock for run meters from the Northern Hemisphere, getting 16 a game. We've got a couple of guys in Southern Hemisphere who can maybe match him, but from all the Six Nations locks, he's the most able to carry the ball forward. The most average passes of all locks, over 6 passes a game, so the guy's got the hands. The most kicks of any lock, I think he kicked a 50-22. So, he's got literally a pretty all-round skills game. And he's a little bit behind some of the kind of top tacklers of the game, like a James Ryan, like a Johnny Gray, guys like that do tackle a bit more than him. But TADHG BEIRNE, I think it would be remiss of me to not include him. So, there you go. That's your locking duo. I forgot to mention at the start, I pretty much excluded any guys who only played like 1 or 2 games. I'm looking at guys who played 5 or more games across the year. So there you go. Loose forwards. I ended up going with another Irishman. I put him at 6, even though he's played 6 and 8. And old CAELAN DORIS. He's had a pretty good year. Speaking of guys who can win turnovers, CAELAN DORIS is the top equal loose forward with 12 across the year. He's the top line-out winning loose forward. So if you want a genuine line-out option of your loosies, CAELAN DORIS is certainly one of those. 13 tackles a game. He's only behind guys who like mostly play 7. Like there's a few guys who play 7 who tackle a wee bit more than Caelan. I was like Josh van der Flier. I think maybe Hamish Watson tackle more times than him. But of guys who play kind of 6 or 8, I think maybe Faletau and Courtney Laws are above him. But he's literally right up there. He gets a bunch of passes. He beats a bunch of defenders. Caelan Doris, absolute unit. And as I say, literally a guy who can do a bit of everything. He can win turnovers. He can tackle. He can win line-up ball. He can beat defenders. He can pass. Like, yeah, pretty good year from Caelan Doris. And the Irish theme continues, man. I swear I didn't just try and like pick guys from any one country. I literally looked at the stats to kind of narrow guys down. But Josh van der Flier, he's just mental. 17 tackles a game. He's first, in case you were wondering. I think the next best guy is Francois Klus, who had like 15 and played certainly a lot less game time than Josh van der Flier did. 4 tries. He's only behind Adi Savia in terms of loose forwards with tries. So you love to see Josh van der Flier getting some tries, don't you? Because when I think Josh van der Flier, I think guy who makes 1,000,000 tackles and the guy who shoots out of the line to make the opposition 10's life miserable because he just runs like a bloody Energizer bunny. But he scored 4 tries. He even got a try assist. He had like 3 clean breaks across the year. I think only 2 loose forwards had 4 clean breaks. So in terms of being able to get into some space, he's right up there. And the only 7 who had more defenders beaten than him was Hamish Watson. So yeah, man. No wonder he won World Player of the Year. Because he was doing some absolutely freakish stuff. And the last one I've got is another Frenchman in GREGORY ALLDRITT. Hence moving Doris to 6 because ALLDRITT at 8 is a must. The guy, he is a coach's dream because kind of like Josh van der Flier, I guess, with the whole Energizer Bunny theme, he just keeps going and going and going and going. 13 runs a game. He's first of all the loose forwards. 49 run meters a game. He's first of all the loose forwards. 2.5 defenders beaten a game. He's first of all the Six Nations loose forwards. There may be some Southern Hemisphere guys who can give him a run for his money. 12 turnovers, 1 is equal with Doris and first equal among loose forwards. 2 try assists. He passes. He tackles. Like his numbers are good for passing and tackling and whatnot, but he's not first. But basically, he gets the ball and he carries it all day long. Like, yeah, and his ability to break down can't be underestimated, man. So, yeah, GREGORY ALLDRITT, very, very important man for France. So, if you're looking at that forward pack, very much a French and Irish theme with a sprinkling of English. As I said, not intentional, but sometimes that's just the way it goes out because good players have good stats. Scrum half. There's no prizes for guessing Antoine Dupont. I mean, I tried. I tried not to pick him. I thought, let's have a look at some stats. Like Gibson Park's pretty good. For Ireland, he's a phenomenal year. Maybe Gibson Park's doing some stuff off the stats as well, because not everything is covered by stats for sure. But I mean, Dupont, he's a generational player, man. 32 run meters a game. I mean, you're not necessarily picking your scrum half because he gets a bunch of run meters, but 32. When the next best guy gets 18, you know you're looking at something special. 2 defenders beaten the game, the next is 1.4. 9 tackles a game at 93% for a number 9. Like the next best is 7, and that's at 85%. That's Bertrand from Argentina. So, yeah, he's well ahead. He's got the most average kicks a game for 9s with 10. He finishes with a couple of try assists, or 3 try assists, a couple of tries. So he is behind like Gibson Park and Smith and Price for the average passes, but he's only just behind them. So he's kind of like 4th guy. Remember, he kicks it a lot more. Yeah, he is just a guy you need to appreciate. That the fact that you get to watch this guy play his rugby now, and you can tell your kids or your grandkids that you got to see him play, and they're going to be like, who is that guy? Oh, I've seen highlights of him. He looked all right, basically. So, yeah, Antoine Dupont, he's pretty good, just quietly. 10, I ended up going with Johnny Sexton. And again, not just because he got nominated for World Player of the Year along with DuPont, but the guy's still got it. I looked at the numbers. He gets a lot of ball. 23 passes a game. He is a little bit behind Bigger and Russell for the amount of passes he makes a game, so they get their hands on the pill a wee bit more. But he gets more run meters per carry. Remember the guy's age. He still loves the contact. He gets more run meters per carry than either Bigger or Russell, more than like Intermac from France. Yeah, which is kind of surprising. I mean, Marcus Smith does get a bit more ball in hand stuff than Sexton in terms of like running the ball forward. And the guy loves his tackles though. Tackles at 92% and makes like 7 or 8 tackles a game, which is absolutely right up there as far as 10s go. So, I mean, the non-statistical side of your brain tells you Ireland look a better side when Sexton's playing. And the stats just show you, yeah, the guy's still got it. So, yeah, DuPont or Sexton. You could do worse than picking those two guys. Midfield. Now, here comes one that was a little bit left field. If you'd asked me to pick one from my gut feeling, it would not have been this guy. And that guy is Welshman Nick Tompkins. I was kind of surprised, as you probably are right now. I always appreciated Nick Tompkins as being a pretty good player. I always thought he's Wales' best 12. But, yeah, his numbers are kind of crazy. He's got the most average tackles of any of the guys who pretty much specialise at 12, with 9 a game. 83% is his tackling rate is like okay. It's passable without being like phenomenal. He's not like Sexton at 92 or DuPont at 93. So he's fallen off a few, but he's making a lot. He's a big distribution option, man. He makes 10 passes a game, which in terms of like 12s, I think he's second only to Owen Farrell. Remember, Owen Farrell is kind of a 10-12. So, Tompkins loves chucking the ball around. And his turnovers conceded numbers are ridiculously low. It's not like he's mucking this stuff up. He's remarkably reliable. He's got more average defenders beaten than a guy like Bundyaki or Robbie Henshaw. Like, admittedly, he is behind McCloskey, but McCloskey didn't play that many games. And McCloskey's a massive human being. But McCloskey probably doesn't have the distribution options that Tompkins have. So, he did remarkably well. Surprising. I honestly wouldn't have picked it. But as I said, my brain did tell me Tompkins is a good player, but didn't see the stats kind of shining through. So that's nice. Nice to get a Welsh option up here when they've not had their best year. 13, I went with Gael Fiku. And he's one guy who I swear his stats don't do him justice, but obviously in some regards they still absolutely do him justice because as far as defensive midfielders go, he's certainly one of the best around. Tackles at 89%, which is very, very good. You know, when you're getting around 90%, you're doing very well. Wins 5 turnovers across the competition, which is the best of all the guys who were in the midfield. This year he gets a couple of tries. He doesn't get as much ball as some of the other guys who play 13, but remembering that France tend to play with less than 50% possession. They're a team that's quite comfortable playing without the ball, but generally he does more with the ball than some of the other midfielders around. Like in terms of like meters per carry, his numbers are higher than pretty much everyone except Mark Bennett from Scotland. He's a genuine kicking option. He kicks the ball more than a guy like Ringrose or some of the other guys who've played 13 this year. So, Fiku, defensively, absolutely solid. I mean, the non-stat side of your brain goes, he's always in the right place at the right time. So, positioning and stuff, which isn't really measurable, is phenomenal. But, Fiku, thought he's had a pretty good year as well. Outside backs was tough. I ended up going with a guy who missed the end of the year, but still played enough games to get on my board. And that's James Lowe. Now, James Lowe certainly doesn't have a perfect game because everyone says his defense is terrible. And admittedly, his defensive numbers are not great. Like his tackling percentage is 69%, which is probably not as bad as everyone says it is, but obviously you'd like it to be a wee bit higher. But the dude's got a big old boot. And I don't think you can underestimate how important that is to the Irish game. He's certainly got more kicks than any other winger this year, because it is such a weapon. He's got 4 try assists this year, which is more than any other winger. And remember, he didn't play He didn't play all the games this year. He's got 79 run meters a game, which is first of all the wingers this year. It's an average. 10.5 runs a game, more than any other winger. Like the guy, despite the fact that people kind of hate on him for his defence, he's a weapon. He is a genuine weapon. So fingers crossed he gets himself fit and shows up for Ireland come Six Nations time. Right wing, I had to go with the wee man and old Darcy Graham. Darcy Graham is another one who maybe doesn't get the love that he deserves. I mean, people have been calling him a discount Colby in the comment section for at least 12 months. But, I mean, I know Colby hasn't played that many games, but I would be surprised if Cheslin Colby has got as good as numbers as Darcy Graham did in 2022. He is phenomenal. Run meters, he's first of the right wingers with 65, so he's a little bit behind James Lowe, but I'm not sure whether it's true, but people say right wingers don't get the balls much. We could probably analyse the stats for that. Something about people passing naturally better left. But anyway, of right wingers, he's first. He's third overall for wingers. He's the first guy for clean breaks. He has got 6 tries. He's the first for like average defenders beaten a game with 4. Like he's more than Duhan van der Merwe. So Darcy Graham has been absolutely devastating on attack. So it's really, really pleasing to put him there. And even his tackling rate is at like 76%, which is more than a lot of the wingers get. There's a few good defensive wingers out there, but like I mentioned with James Lowe's numbers being a wee bit below that, I think Darcy Graham doing all right, man. He had a pretty phenomenal season. And the last of the starters, I managed to go with this guy, ANGE CAPUOZZO. And also kind of surprisingly, like a bit like Nick Tompkins, I was thinking like, yeah, the guy's the face of Italian rugby. He scored a few nice tries, got nominated, well, won the Emerging Player of the Year. But are his numbers going to back it up? Yeah, they really do. He scores 5 tries, which is the most among fullbacks. He averages 70 run meters a game, which is behind only Stuart Hogg. So he's not doing too bad there. But he does average more meters per carry than Hoggy does. I mean, Hoggy's got a bigger boot on him, but CAPUOZZO's effective carrying has been phenomenal. He's got the most average defenders beaten. He's just behind Darcy Graham with almost 4 per game. And his tackling's at 78%. He's only a little guy, and I did see him at least once get skinned totally by the Georgian fullback Niniashvili, but he didn't even get a hand on him. But 78%, for context, like Hogg is 67% and Freddie Stewart's like 55%. So for CAPUOZZO to be at 78%, he's doing all right. He's doing all right. So very much deserving, I think, of that Player of the Year award that he got. So there you go, folks. That's your starting 15. As far as your bench goes, hooker, Dan Sheehan from Ireland. If you want a dynamic ball-carrying hooker, I think he is your guy. Loosehead, Andrew Porter. I think he won like 6 turnovers and can scrummage the house down. Absolute unit. Tight head prop, Kyle Sinclair. Loves the carry, can pass the ball, and good scrummager as well. Lock is a weird one. Like, you should probably go with James Ryan if you go by reputation. The guy tackles the house down. But I ended up going with Niccolò Cannone from Italy. He's a weird one with his stats are just freakishly high. Admittedly, Italy played a few tier 2 countries, so probably boosted the stats up a wee bit, whereas Ireland toured New Zealand. But I mean, tackling machine, wins lineouts, break defenders. I want to give that guy some credit for a great season, still in a young man as well. Talupe Faletau is your loose forward. The guy in a pretty poor year for Wales still looked class, scored a couple of tries, great meters per carry. Great tackling, so credit to him. Backs, I think it'd be hard to go past Gibson Park for 9s. Had like 5 try assists or something stupid. Really, really good season. Makes Ireland go forward like nobody else. Finn Russell as your backup 10. 7 try assists, I believe, which is certainly the most of anybody this year, even though he didn't play all the games. And then your kind of midfield, outside back cover, Damien Penaud. Like 8 tries, very unlucky not to be ahead of Darcy Graham, but Darcy Graham also had some kind of freakishly high numbers. So there you go, folks. That is Northern Hemisphere Team of the Year. A couple of surprises, a few that I think will make pretty much everyone's team, and yeah, certainly a wee bit to talk about. You guys let us know your thoughts as I check out the article if you want to read a bit more into it as well. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.